Hey friends, this is Scott Giles, a certified hypno coach and a diplomate of the National Guild of Hypnotists. Thank you for tuning in to one of my Facebook Live shoots here. Today I want to talk about people who are emotional werewolves. Now, the werewolf is one of the oldest themes in mythology. It goes back to ancient Greece. By an emotional werewolf, I mean a person who goes from behaving perfectly normally to being their worst self on the spur of the moment, very quickly. No warning, and no even clear reason. Now, when I talk about people like this, I am not talking about someone who suffers from a bipolar mood disorder, where their mood may go from very high to very low, or low to extremely low on a cycle. I am not talking about premenstrual dysphoric disorder, women who get PMS so badly they can actually become homicidal or psychotic. I'm not talking about what's called clinical lycanthropy, people who actually have a delusion that they turn into an animal. Yeah, that's a thing. I'm not talking about someone with an impulse control disorder who just can't regulate their behavior. These are mental illnesses. I'm also not talking about an anniversary reaction where something bad happened to you at some point, and then on the anniversary of that, you find yourself looping back to feel the way you did then. That's actually a normal behavior. But the premenstrual dysphoric disorder, the bipolar mood disorder, lycanthropy, impulse control, these things are mental illnesses. That's not what I'm talking about when I talk about an emotional werewolf. Now, the werewolf is typically described as an angry wolf in legend. And the emotional werewolf is going to be a person who has a very short fuse or is easily triggered. And you find yourself always walking on eggshells around them because you don't know when they're going to suddenly become their worst self, and can do so at a on very short notice or no notice at all. So you're handling them like you're handling a bottle of nitroglycerin. Now, these people may outwardly in their behavior do things that resemble those mental illnesses I mentioned. A person whose mood suddenly seems to swing, who goes from being happy one moment to extremely sad, or vice versa. Or someone who seems almost in a rage all the time, or who just lashes out for no reason, or does something that has everyone holding their breath trying to figure out what the heck just happened. The behavior of those mental illnesses and the behavior of the emotional werewolf may be the same, but they're not the same phenomena. And here's how you can tell. People who have the mental illnesses that I mentioned, they're suffering. I don't think there's any condition that's harder to live with than the bipolar mood disorder, for example. Their lives are often a train wreck. They ruminate and they're embarrassed by what they've done. Their relationships are typically disordered. That's because they can't control the behaviors that they're doing. They can't pick and choose when their mood is going to shift or when they're going to make a bad decision. However, the emotional werewolf is not doing it because they're suffering. They're not doing it because they have a mental illness. They're doing it as a manipulative strategy to get their way or to show you who's boss. So what you do is you watch. With the person who has the emotional illness, you're going to find regret or embarrassment, and the rest of their life will often give you a clue too. With the emotional werewolf, you're going to see a little bit of happiness or satisfaction when they've acted out because they got their way. They wanted you to fear them. They wanted you to do what they said. They wanted to keep you off balance. They wanted to show you who's boss. And when their sudden change in behavior does that, they're satisfied. They're happy with that. So you look for that little flash of satisfaction or happiness. That's what gives it away. So what do you do when you're in a relationship or having to deal with an emotional werewolf? Well, boundary setting is always a good idea. Don't get too close to something that might suddenly bite you. Try not to trigger them if you can figure that out. But fundamentally realize that the behavior is not your problem. The behavior belongs to the emotional werewolf. And don't take it personally, don't take it seriously, and don't rise to the bait. Never argue with these people or try to persuade them that they're wrong and you're right. That's not what they're doing. They're trying to get you to move in a certain direction. This is manipulation, not information exchange. So don't rise to the bait. That's probably the best way to deal with these folks. Now, last week I talked about the emotional vampire, people who drain energy of the people around them. And this week I'm talking about the emotional werewolf, because as this video is being made, we're in the holiday season, the winter holiday season. So a lot of us will be getting together with family members, and these are often going to be people who have issues with us, or we have issues with them. So we get together with these people that have issues and we add alcohol. And that typically doesn't make everything better, because you can get, if you've got an emotional werewolf or an emotional vampire in your family system, very likely that's going to manifest during this time, especially if alcoholic beverages are providing some lubrication. So things can get interesting. The only thing that would make it more interesting if we got together with people with whom we have issues, added alcohol and firearms. I'm joking. I'm kidding about that, obviously. But the point remains that this time of year with these gatherings, you're going to see this kind of behavior demonstrated if you have these kinds of people in your family system. So this is a great time to notice, to actually watch what they do and look for that flash of satisfaction. Then you know you don't have a person who's suffering. You have a person who's trying to manipulate, and then you act accordingly and do what's in your best interest. Thank you very much for being with me. I will be back the same time next week, 2:30 Central Time, every Saturday. And next time I'm going to be talking about rules for talking to yourself. And I hope some of you will be here so that I don't end up talking to myself on Facebook Live. Thank you very much. Have a great day.